Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Well, hello everybody, and happy Tuesday night. Happy equinox, by the way. It is equinox. I'm really surprised that we didn't do anything with Dennis Stone regarding the equinox. I always love talking with him about the awesome alignments that they have over at America's Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. If you're up there in the Northeast, stop on by and check that place out. It is a fantastic spot. Really, really cool location. One of the spots that I love talking about because it is just chock full of archaeoastronomic alignments that are just like, why are they there? And our guest in the first section tonight will be our good friend James Keenan. He is a regular researcher featured on Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. He is also the author of so many books, including a great one, Bigfoot at Skinwalker Ranch. He does tons of parafiction, things like that. Great books, awesome stuff to just like read on airplanes, things like that if you're a traveler like myself. I love carrying his stuff around. There's been quite a few times where somebody's been interested in it and I end up just handing it to them. Because I've typically got a copy or two of things like that I enjoy, so I can just hand them out to people. But we'll be talking with James in the first segment about his research, not only into Blind Frog Ranch, but into so many other topics when it comes to ancient civilizations here in America, the root of many civilizations such as Native American cultures here in America, and where they may have come from. And in the second part, we will be talking with our good friend Craig Woolheater, founder of Cryptomundo, as well as the co-host of the Fouke Monster Festival. We'll be talking with him about why he puts on the Fouke Monster Festival, what started that whole situation with Mayor Purvis out there in Fouke, Arkansas, and how important it is for shows like that really help keep local fare alive. And I don't mean just like local restaurants, things like that. I mean like local legends, localized stories, localized experiences that still occur, and many of these topics, many of these things, even some of the work of James Keenan, these things divide communities. And there are parts of the community that are like, yes, absolutely, let's talk about the ancient civilization that may have been here. And then there are others that are like, please leave that alone. We'd like to just live our life. We'd like to not deal with that. But it's important for us to keep these stories alive because many of them trace back many years, many of them trace back generations, and many of them are integral to culture and to the carrying forth of cultures. So welcome back to the show, James Keenan. How are you doing, my friend?
Christopher, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things about Googling you is if you just Google James Keenan, it immediately pops up Maynard James Keenan, the lead singer of Tool. Like the whole thing. It's like, oh, wow. That's awesome. What an amazing person to be confused with Google.
Right.
just before I came on air, I was just looking through my news feeds and stuff, doing my regular posts, and there was a thing about Maynard James Keenan helps train Mike Tyson for upcoming fight. I was like,
I saw that. Yeah.
I showed my wife. I was like, see, I told you, he's everywhere. James Keenan is all over the place. So you have been doing some amazing work, and it's been really great to, over the last many years, see your work be featured in shows like Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. How did you first get into researching ancient cultures, ancient civilizations?
Oh, well, I always said that that these ancient cultures and civilizations and this lost history deals a lot with what we consider supernatural, paranormal. A lot of the cultures and civilizations of the time were based on a lot of supernatural experiences that occurred between them. And so when I went into, always interested in it, hence the fictional novels that I've written or the fictional children's books. And as I got older, I decided that anthropology and archaeology was probably something that I really wanted to delve into. I had been in law enforcement, private investigations, and I had always figured out that at some point I would flip over from law enforcement to investigating, history and these lost people and their cultures and civilizations. And so when I retired from law enforcement and private investigation, I went ahead and, did what I always wanted, started writing the books because I had the time and the ability. And I do, even though it's fictional, I like to put in a lot of the research that's occurred, a lot of the history that we have found into those books. So, not only is it a story that I attempt to give to the readers, but also historical records that they wouldn't be able to get any other way.
Well, and what I also love about them is that they are, for people who may not be initiates into these topics, they are great beginning forays into understanding these topics, whether it be Bigfoot, Skinwalker Ranch, what have you. All of the books that I have of yours are great. If you're wanting to have that conversation with somebody for the first time, it's a great introduction.
Exactly, and I appreciate you bringing that up because one of three of the books are all related, where it's even to help children kind of understand the paranormal events or these crypto type creatures. So the first one deals with UFOs and aliens when the main character is in the 4th grade. Then into the 5th grade, he's dealing with shapeshifters. And then it goes into Bigfoot and actual supernatural or paranormal locations such as Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. So it gives them the opportunity not only to incorporate the story that's in the book, but also to get a good understanding of the subject matter, which I find very interesting. And I think at some periods or at some points in the past, they may have actually overlapped or intertwined together.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that is what more and more research into these fields is showing. I mean, that's one of the things that I bring up regularly on the show is even this last year, the fact of quantum entanglement winning the Nobel Peace Prize sews up so many seams in these stories of paranormal encounters and the way that paranormal things tie together.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's an excellent point because we've always talked about portals. People say, oh, these portals, they open up, or there's these certain areas like Sedona, or, the Vernal Roosevelt area in Utah. And when you really think about it, you can scientifically say these appear to be X points, that are occurring where this electromagnetic energy is being incorporated or turned into plasma energy. And that may be these actual entrances or exits to other places. And even NASA is, been investigating them above our planet for a little over a decade now with several satellites.
Yep. And that is one of the things, not only at Blind Frog Ranch, but right down the road at Skinwalker Ranch, that like this whole area is hugely rich in iridium deposits, hugely like it seems like it's just sitting on top of a massive meteorite is what it seems like.
That's what it looks like, is that in the distant past, there appears to have been an asteroid strike or a very large meteor that hit, whether it was when Lake Uinta was there. And you got to remember that Lake Uinta was so large that it was in Colorado, Utah, and the bottom portion of Wyoming. That's how large it was. So if it did strike, Lake Uinta in some places were over 1,000 feet deep. It would have made it very difficult to find remnants of this. But, just from the deposits of metals and minerals, it really has to make you wonder if that indeed is what occurred. And that's what these electromagnetic anomalies are occurring throughout the basin and in the Uinta Mountains because of that.
Well, yeah. And situations like that, meteor deposits, things like iridium, rare earth metals, those cause all kind of magnetic anomaly. I mean, even the idea of Bermuda being made out of, like, I think it's 40% magnetite, something like that. There are places on Bermuda, even on the mainland, where compasses just don't work right. And it's because of those deposits. It's because of those things. Now, this last season of Blind Frog Ranch got into some really wild stuff. I mean, I will give you kudos, James. I don't know if I could have crawled down. I don't know if I could have crawled out of that place backward. That was the wild part, was seeing the one guy have to crawl out backward. I was like, yeah, that would have been me, and that would have been terrifying.
Yes.
So kudos to you for making it all the way down there, man. That was a long sideways crawl for you guys to get back into that area and explore that. It
was tight. It was very tight. And the cameraman started having some issues when he was halfway in. And the only way for him to get out was I had to keep going forward. And he had to wait, because you were talking about a space that was maybe 2.5 feet wide by 2 feet high for quite a while. And finally, when I got past him, then he was able to crawl back out.
Wow. And once down there, now granted, I know that things are shooting for the next season, all that kind of stuff. Things kind of ended with being in the cave and being in that area. But the journey to getting to that, finding old mining road maps, things like that, like these are the waters that you wade all the time in your research. How do you go about gaining access to those things? How do you go about finding things like, oh, here's the old mining trail maps, things like that?
It's a lot of research. You have to go to the historical centers, to the libraries. I just recently got back from Spain because we went to the archives in Sevilla, because there's 500 plus years of data there, from 1490s all the way until 1900s, in regards to journal entries and in regards to expeditions that took place, in regards to individuals and groups that the Spaniards came into contact with. And over time, they got stored and all this information was lost. And that happens here in the United States. It's interesting because a lot of times, people are like, oh, that never happened. We've been taught that before. But think about it. We've lost history within a 200-year period. We're not quite sure exactly what's happened 200 years ago. Think about thousands of years ago, or 500 years ago with the conquistadors and with Cortez and what he did to the Mexica, the Aztec. And, with Blind Frog Ranch, it's intertwined with my research into a lost culture and civilization and what origin was for a lot of what we now call Native Americans. I think that there were groups here that weren't Native American, whether they came while they were here or even before that. And so the history just has been muddied or completely lost. And it's a matter of locating that and then getting, the breadcrumbs and following the trail. And
Sure.
the trail leads to Mexico City. It leads to Spain. I've gone as far as it leads to ancient Armenia, which is now in Turkey.
Yeah.
A big part of my research and everything that I work in is on the giants. And there's this rich history of a lot of giants having been in the desert Southwest, which incorporates where Blind Frog Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch are located.
Yeah, and that is interesting because there are definitely, stories dating back to mining camp days, things like that, of things being found by the Smithsonian and taken away, and of course the famed story of the Indians trapping the group of them inside of a cave and burning them.
The Site Ka, right, in Lovelock Cave in Nevada, correct? It's, you talk about the red-headed cannibal giants, the Site Ka, and that occurring. I've actually talked about the fact that they were headhunters. They weren't quite cannibals. There might have been some rituals that occurred in regards to that, but they were headhunters. They were taking heads between warring factions and other groups that they came in contact with. And we see this in the petroglyphs all over the desert Southwest, especially in Utah.
Yeah. And I mean, the stories of them literally coming and scooping people up into baskets, carrying them off, all kinds of things. There is some very famous artwork, all kinds of stuff regarding these stories. So it's and even it even goes into the possible concepts of the mound builders and the mound building society and
the Adena cultures. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating once you start really digging into it. Now whether they were Nephilim, anything like that, who knows? But we definitely have some very modern evidence for these things, especially when you start looking at stuff like Dragon Man, found in the last 2 years. The skull of apparently a 9-foot person, 9-foot species of people in China.
Right, and here's something good to talk about. The reason why we're finding more and more outside of the United States is because of the NAGPRA law here in the U.S., which has made it next to impossible to do any type of research when it comes to human remains. And as of January of this year, they made it even more difficult. You can't even look at photos if it deals with human remains. So we're finding more of our past outside of the United States, especially in locations like China, where they were prevalent and located. If we take the time to investigate more, we're going to find that in the east part of Turkey, which was ancient Armenia, which I believe was origin for these people of great stature. The original being Og, who was a deity to many people around the world, which makes you wonder how that was possible, that he was being worshipped, in Africa, in South America, in the Americas.
Yeah.
And the fact was that the transportation back then and the technology was greater than what we give it credit to have been.
Well, and that is something that we discuss regularly on the show, James, is the fact of our memories as a species are very short. They're very short-lived. And the example that I give is I'm Cajun. My mother is 100% Cajun. I'm getting ready to go to my family reunion this upcoming weekend in just a few days. All kinds of generations. There will maybe be 2 to 3 people there that are fluent in Cajun, one of the only languages native to North America, like distinctly here, only exists here. But it took one generation of kids going to school, being told that was the language of the ignorant, you don't speak that here, being put in the corner with dunce caps, for it to become the language of the, quote, rednecks, and them not to want to speak it. Now there is a huge revival in the state trying to, like it used to be that, you know, you took kind of like a survival Cajun class at one point in school where at least for 6 months you learned a little bit. But I don't know people in my family that are fluent in the mother tongue. And that's within the lifetime of my mother. That's less than 100 years. Less than 100 years. It takes less than one generation to totally forget. And you would be hard pressed right now to go out, take a chunk of wood to somebody and tell them, I need a spiral column carved. You know, you could take it to 1,000 CNC shops and have it done, but to find somebody to hand carve you and hand mill columns out of wood, things like that, you know, trades that were once regular commonplace, that are now gone. And once again, within a generation, it doesn't take long to forget a type of technology.
Right. And you just made another point. Wood. Remember that wood doesn't last like stone. So we have petroglyphs and pictographs because it was on stone. But look, they just found within the last 150 or 160 years that wood carving that was like 10 or I think it was 2 or 3 parts. It was originally like 20 feet tall in Russia because it fell into a peat bog and survived. And it's older than Göbekli Tepe. So the problem is either we've lost the culture, including what was spoken, the spoken language, and not everything was on stone. It was wood like we do today. Most things were built and used with, you know, being wood, and that was the medium. And unfortunately, it does not last. You know, look at the Aztec. We only have few wood pieces remaining, and that was 500 years ago.
And that is absolute truth, James. And especially whenever you start looking at some of the artifacts like what you sent me, the other thing that they worked in regularly was, well, of course, things like gold. You know, where they put something that you know, ideas that really, really meant something. And that's an idea that we talk about with Keith Sealand regularly, is that there is a difference between a petroglyph and rock art. You know, petroglyphs have something to do with religious symbology, with origin stories, with stories of connections to other realms, things like that. Whereas rock art is much more like, hey, look at the hunt that we had last spring.
That's true. Well, I'll generalize. I'll use the term rock art because that's what most people understand. But you're exactly right. There's a difference between abstract features, zoomorphic, anthropomorphic features, and what is trying to be told. A lot of that is medicine man culture. They were conducting rituals or documenting what they saw. You know, some people look at certain things that have been captured in the past on rock, and they're like, oh, this was just them using a hallucinogenic type of drug or something. But what if it wasn't? What if it was something that they physically saw and were capturing, or it created a religion because of that? This supernatural phenomena occurred, and they didn't know what to make of it. So what do? You create a cargo cult, or what they used to on the islands in the Pacifics, you know, during World War II. A cult around what they just don't understand.
Yeah, no, precisely about what randomly pops up. And it's interesting that you bring up the cargo cults, because it's a prime example of modern meeting ancient, and not that long ago, to the point that even not too long ago, there was a tribe in the Amazon that was shooting things at a timber drone, stuff like that. They had never seen a drone. They were an untouched civilization, stuff like that. And to actively see their reaction, like, here's a timber company out filming with a drone, and to see them like actively start to attack this drone, like shooting arrows at it, slinging rocks at it, anything they could do, because they have no idea what that thing is. you know,
right. Misunderstood.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even got a concept album that I'm working on right now where imagine if, especially a lot of the tribal images that you see, the squares, the triangles, the what look like water, to me as somebody who designs electronics and deals with synthesizers, those are waveforms. And when you start looking at some of them, they look an awful lot like binaural beat waveforms.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild, and I'm actively working on an album right now with the idea of what if the people who drew these were synesthetics and were actively drawing what they heard in the world around them, you know. And when I've taken these images from petroglyphs and actively traced them out and put them through synthesizers and things like that, the sounds are pretty otherworldly, James. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah, and on top of that too, there looks to be a lot of plasma events that were occurring up in the sky that were being recorded as it was occurring, and whether that was from some type of event from the sun, like a CME, a coronal mass ejection, or some type of interference with Venus, which is our closest sister planet. You know, a lot of in the past, I believe a lot of electrical arcing occurred because Venus was not where it is today. And that possibility comes from, you know, the way that it rotates and evolves differently than most of the other planets. It's just backwards compared to pretty much all the other planets except for one other one. That one's way, way, way out there in the solar system.
Well, and these things, these concepts, once again, these high concepts are the things that they took the time to put into sheets of gold. These were the things that they took the time to, you know, make panels and tombs about, and to decorate chest plates and headwear with. These were the motifs that they used.
Yeah, and you know, you're looking at iconography. They said they didn't have a written language, but you're looking at it right now.
Yeah.
It was iconography. Look at the Egyptian writings.
Yes.
You know, the hieroglyphics were done through iconography. And you know, with what you have up on the screen right now, that's what I'm searching for. I'm searching for this ancient burial site, also where all these artifacts are stored. Unfortunately, those that were with the Mesoamerican cultures, most of them were destroyed when they were melted down by the conquistadors or the Spaniards that followed. And other groups have lost it. You know, this is me at the at the archives in Sevilla. We've just unfortunately lost so much. Even the Aztecs themselves in 1433 wanted to consider themselves a more advanced group of people above all others. So the Tlatoani at the time, who was the emperor in 1433, destroyed a lot of the writings that they had, the codices that the Aztec had. So then it fell to oral tradition for most of, you know, what we had, especially by the time Cortez defeated, you know, the Aztecs in 1521. There wasn't a whole lot, and then the Catholics came and destroyed whatever else was left,
and then changed whatever else was left and incorporated into religion and all that kind of stuff. For the Catholicism that exists in Mexico and Central South America is a totally unique form of Catholicism, and very much combined with the Indios religions of the area. That's where you get Dia de los Muertos and all these very specific festivals that are celebrated in conjunction with the church.
Sure. Yep. They thought they were controlling, and I think they figured out the only way they could do that was to allow the alteration in the religion or the way it was in the Americas.
Well, and even to the point of, you know, once again, culture being forgotten, it was not a rarity for a king to basically, like, you know, go full on lion pride and just eat the young of its predecessor, so to speak, where
Sure.
it happened in Egypt, where a pharaoh came in and was like, you know what? Everything they were about, just like chisel their faces off the statues.
Yeah,
Get
let
rid
me
of
put
them.
my face on the lion.
Change it all, because nobody needs to remember that. So it was not the first culture, not the first society to do such things. That was fairly common practice amongst societies.
Sure, the incoming control the narrative afterward.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, that's how you ended up with the Ptolemaic kings and all that kind of stuff, and going from that to, Pharaoh being God. And it's interesting to see those changes, and it's also interesting to see that once again things like the pictographs on the religious symbols, things like that, are the language of the elite. They're the language of the royalty. They are the language of the high priests. It's not like the average Egyptian was walking down the street with like a newspaper full of hieroglyphs.
Sure.
That wasn't their spoken language. That was the sacred language understood by the priests and things like that.
Exactly. It was kept with the elites.
Now, your research that you're doing now, going back to Blind Frog Ranch, how does the research into ancient Aztec society, its connection to and lost information in Spain, how does all of that connect to the Blind Frog Ranch area, James?
So I've told many people that my belief is that origin for a lot of Native Americans, if not most, is in the Uinta Mountains. And I believe this area is known as Tamuancan. If you're speaking Uto-Aztecan, you would say Tamuanchan, but I believe that the pronunciation has changed over time. And this was an origin site that they survived something that occurred in the past, whether that was the Great Deluge or not, I'm not sure, some type of meteor strike. They lived there for a long time. It became sacred. Then it was used as a burial site as well for the aerial chiefs and for the deities, which were these people of great stature, which were the giants that were roaming around in the area and were worshipped on that in-between time period where the cultures overlapped. And there were a lot of artifacts stored there because we're talking about thousands of years of use. So the Aztecs, when Moctezuma or Montezuma was killed in June, his brother, Cuitlahuac, pushed out Cortez in the Night of Sorrow, and he had the warriors and the slaves take the treasure that was recovered, because a lot of the conquistadors were drowned because they wouldn't let go of the gold and fell into Lake Texcoco. He dredged it. They picked up 3,500 pounds of gold and silver along with what was still hidden, and he had it moved. He died within 90 days of becoming the Tlatoani, or the emperor, and then Montezuma's nephew became the last Tlatoani, Cuauhtemoc. And so he was tortured by Cortez, but didn't know where the gold and all the other treasure was taken. Well, I believe that a majority of it was taken back to Tamuancan in the Uinta Mountains and stored there because it's this ancient site. And the Uto-Aztecan people, remember, include the Shoshone, the Paiute, the Ute. They're brothers with those that became the Mexica, or what we know as the Aztec. So who better but family to protect this site along with the treasure that they knew the Spaniards were going to be relentless in looking for and trying to take it, because gold and the other treasure was what drove Cortez and the Spaniards that followed. So the two are connected. The Mesoamerica is connected with northeastern Utah because it was an original site for them. And now it holds portion of the Aztec treasure that got away from Cortez in 15 1520.
And that is purportedly well, let's just say a good quantity of treasure, James, that was supposedly stashed away during that time. Oh, no worries.
Because Cortez knew exactly what he had.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what he had. He lost 3,500 pounds, but you're not talking about just the weight of gold and silver. You're talking about, as an artifact, its value is worth 100 times more than just the metal itself. You know, each piece, who knows what it could bring. So I'm more interested in finding the site and finding the records, the hall of records for these ancients that lived before the Great Deluge, you know, pre-ice, before the Holocene period. And I believe that the treasure is in the same location. So, you know, those that are on Blind Frog Ranch want the treasure. I want the historical data that comes with it, including hopefully finding remains of people of great stature that are hopefully more than 7 or 8 feet tall, but even taller because it goes that far back into distant history.
Wow. And so you are of the belief that in the area is actually a repository of information from this society of people.
Exactly. Whatever was here before, a lot of people say it was the northeastern corner of what was Mu, the great civilization of Mu. Because even though they were far off, whether it was the Indian Ocean or the South Pacific, you got to remember they conquered a lot of territory, just like other civilizations that came afterward.
Yeah.
And this was probably an area that wasn't going to be affected by whatever was going to occur. And a lot of the history was deposited there. So whether that be true or it's just a culture or civilization we've lost knowledge of, it doesn't matter. Finding something like that will rewrite history. It'll rewrite what we've been taught in school.
Absolutely.
We're every day we're finding out that things are a lot older than what we were taught in school. And it's going to go back not just 12,000 years, but I think it's going to go back hundreds of thousands, if not 2 or 3 million years ago. And we're going to find that technology was here that matched or was greater than what we have. It doesn't have to be electricity. It could have been harmonics, frequency, and wavelength can shift and be changed with a drum.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't have to be a high intensity laser or some type of plasma event. It can just be a minimal shift into a frequency and a wavelength that we're not aware of, or we don't know how to harness it properly.
One of the prime examples I talk about all the time, not just on this show, but whenever I'm on other shows talking about the music I make with binaural beats and healing frequencies, things like that, is the complex at Malta, which may have well been a race of giants. We don't know. There are what appear to be cart tracks across the place that are massive, huge. And there is, in that complex, there is a room that resonates in the theta range. So whenever you're in there, if you start humming, chanting, things like that, your brain waves will actively spike in the theta range, which is the range that is associated with heightened states of ecstasy, ecstatic prayer. That is what is associated with things like out-of-body experiences. So yeah, the fact that our ancient ancestors had a great understanding of acoustics. I mean, just go visit Epidaurus sometime in the theater. I remember my professor lighting a match on the stage, and I could hear it at the top of that. There are no amplifiers. It's sheer physics, and it's pretty phenomenal to know that like they were aware of that.
Right, and you know, people look at the Egyptian cultures or the Maya culture, and they came out and they looked like they were instantly advanced. It wasn't that they were instantly advanced. It's that they had this history. They had all this data, and it's been lost or destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. And I mean, it wasn't the first time that it had been lost or destroyed. The story of Atlantis itself and the whole idea of Atlantis and Mu was a story that pre-existed Plato and his telling of it, because it came to him from the Library of Alexandria and stories of that.
Well, even the Bible, it looks like a lot of the stories of the Bible are just regurgitated, from an earlier time period.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely, and I'm a Roman Catholic seminarian, as most of my audience knows. I'm a former seminarian. I did plenty of biblical research, plenty of research in that area, and yes, it is interesting to see what was co-opted, what was reused, what was adapted from local things. I mean, even what we're going into right now, Easter, was Ishtar at one point, and to deny those things is, I think, a little ignorant and one-sided. If you aren't willing to look at actual church history and see that, like, yes, we fully came into an area, co-opted things, and said, oh, you have a festival at that time? Well, guess what? We do too.
Sure. And Genesis has just been condensed. I mean,
yeah.
It was obviously a lot more data. And Sumer, the Sumer was only discussed or talked about one time in the entire Bible.
Yeah.
So, we know that these people outside of the Levant existed, and we were taking that data and that information and just adding it to the more recent books that we have. Like I said, we can't keep 200 years of history in order. Think about 2,000 years, and now think about past that period.
Yeah, precisely. And we rediscover things all the time. It's interesting.
All the time.
That is a huge topic that we talk about regularly. The idea that science cannot, by definition, be static. It can't be static. Even when you look at things like, I belong to a lot of the Oak Island groups. I love Oak Island. I wish it didn't compete with my show, James, because it's airing right now. Not only because I miss it whenever it's on live, but B, I know a lot of acorns that are busy watching that, and then they watch me in rerun instead. But it's one of those, people get angry, and I'm like, number one, apparently you have not been tuning into the intro throughout all of these seasons, because there's apparently one more person that has to die before they find any treasure. They say it in the first 10 seconds, like somebody has to die. But I think you're missing the real treasure, which is the history and the science of the area that's being changed. And piles of Aztec gold or not, James, you guys are changing not only the local geological science of the area with the deposits y'all are finding and the proof of that y'all are finding, which definitely, I think, contributes and changes some of the research right down the road, with a show on another network that I won't mention. Well,
it's okay. I was on that show too.
I know you were. But no, it's one of those, like, the science of that whole region is changing right now. The history of that whole region is changing because of these shows. It's great.
Well, and you know what? The biggest thing is people constantly bring up the Ute tribe. The Ute have nothing to do with the area. The Ute didn't even come to northeastern Utah until they were forced on the reservation that was actually meant for Utah Territory Indians. There's a difference between Utah Territory Indians and the Ute. The Ute were in Colorado. The reservation was meant for the Shoshone, or the Timpanogos, the snake band Shoshone. And there's 800 or 900 Timpanogos Native Americans that have been lumped into the Ute Reservation, and they're currently fighting for that right to be separated. And that was their reservation that was taken from them because of a misuse of a name. And Chief Wakara, that plays into a lot of what's going on at Blind Frog Ranch, was Snake Band Shoshone. He was Timpanogos. He had nothing to do with the Ute. So we have been getting all our information since the Bigelow era, the 1990s, from the wrong group of individuals. And that's my biggest attempt at changing the paradigm that's going on in the basin, is even with the shapeshifter, the Inalushi, the skinwalkers, they didn't exist there until the 1990s. It got incorporated into the culture there at the reservation. The kids started talking about it at school, and then suddenly it became a part of Ute culture. The Navajo and the Ute had their disagreement in Colorado or New Mexico, not in northeastern Utah. So, Skinwalker Ranch, it's a great name for that. But I think it was better when it was the UFO Ranch. It should be the Phenomena Ranch.
Well, and that's just
more
it.
Than just shapeshifters.
Yeah, when I first heard about the ranch back in the day, early 90s, stuff like that on Coast to Coast AM, it was not called Skinwalker Ranch.
It wasn't, right.
So
and then it became the UFO Ranch.
Yeah.
Look at the OSAP program. They were looking into everything but shapeshifters. There was a lot going on. That $22 million was spent, and I don't think any of it was spent on looking at the Skinwalker.
Or looking into creatures walking in and out of portals or anything like that. Now they may have done a little bit of research into portal phenomena in the area, into things popping in and out of mountains, all kinds of things, most definitely. I would tend to venture a guess, just physics wise, James, and as somebody who is a raging fan of rocks and minerals, especially when it comes to rare earth minerals, when it comes to things like meteorites, you're talking about the possibility of some magnificently huge magnetic anomaly, things like that, yes, could lead to magnetic tunneling in the air. All kinds of things, all kinds of warps in physics if the magnetic field is strong enough, even to the point of like magnetizing copper, things like that.
Sure, and it's transient, whether that be because of an underwater river or something else. It's moving. It's constantly moving, and I've proven that. I've shown that you can't have a negative 14 microtesla and then 130 microtesla the next second at the same location. That's impossible, because once you're talking about a very strong magnetic object, and then you're talking about a dense void. It can't happen, but it does all the time.
And when you brought up the underground river and the flowing of that and the electricity involved on the show, I literally jumped out of my chair and cheered, James. Because people forget the fact that flowing water carries a current.
Sure.
Like you can get shocked from the water coming out of copper pipes. And
it's moderately saline, high in magnesium, and that's what's necessary.
That's it, exactly. And you marry that with a void to be able to, especially inside of that sandstone schist and everything else, to be able to build up a static charge as it flows through, and then add on top of that magnetic deposits from meteorites and rare earth minerals like iridium, everything else. You're talking about literally a layered capacitor.
Right.
Like
exactly.
it's just a charged layered capacitor made out of the earth.
That's exactly. And is it creating phenomena or is it attracting phenomena?
Yeah.
That's what we have to be. Or is it doing both? It may very well be doing both.
Exactly. And that's just it. It is a very interesting area to be able to study. And I'm so happy that you get to be hip deep in that with all of your work and be able to contribute to that, because what you are contributing, especially that line of thought with the moving water underneath things, changing stuff, and possibly being a great source of where a lot of that phenomena comes from, I think is a very important point, James.
And you'll see on last year's episode of Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch, we showed the sinkholes, where this massive amount of water is dumped into the underground karst system and other type of systems there. And remember, last year was the most amount of snow recorded in recorded history. So who knows the volume of water that was traveling underground at that time. I mean, I know that things that were there before were destroyed because of the volume of water. We dug holes and they would fill up completely. It was like we hit one area and it opened up and it just filled the entire ranch.
Yeah, the underwater structures that y'all had found, the stacked timbers and things like that into boxes had been destroyed because of the rushing current.
The amount of current, and I think a lot of people failed to, when that was discussed, I don't think they picked up on the fact that it was the sheer volume of snow and rain that occurred that was going into the sinkholes, to the point where when normally the sinkholes were dried, they were 8 feet high, full of waters coming in from the streams and the creeks still, all the way into July and August.
Wow.
So
that is a massive amount of snow melt, and that changes things drastically, especially whenever you talk about most of the area is almost dry. I mean, I'll bring up the map right now of the Uintah Basin. There's a river and some tributaries and things like that, but it's not like there is a massively huge lake or anything like that in the area. Most of it that comes from snow melt and everything else leaks into these underground caves and underground systems that you're talking about.
They do, up in the Uintah Mountains at over 8,000 feet. So then it travels down, and the Uintah County Water District actually did injected water dye tests and showed that it traveled at a certain degree directly under Blind Frog Ranch into where they were collecting the water at the water collection sites farther south from Blind Frog. So it's just interesting to, again, you have to be able to pull your research from everywhere, and sometimes just a place that you don't think has anything to do with Aztec treasure or an ancient site like Tamuancan, you'll find it with the Uintah Water District, or something to that nature.
Yeah, and once again, the deep research is what it takes. For you to go through and find old mining trails, things like that led down the path of where these things connected, even from the mine shaft that y'all found to the possible connection to the system there on the ranch.
Exactly. And in regards to gold, a lot of those mines, they labeled them as iron mines or something, but secondary or tertiary, every single one of them had gold labeled. And you would do that on purpose. If you have a gold mine, you want to hide that fact.
Yeah. It's not something that you really want to announce.
Now, exactly. And there's a massive fault line that goes across the entire Uintah Mountains from east to west, and this is where all the mineralization occurs. Until recently, within the last 15 years, geologists refused to say that it occurred, and then they finally changed their mind and they're like, yes, all this mineralization occurs. Well, we've already known that since the 1850s when the Mormons came. So they're having to play catch up in the universities, but You go and you get all your information from the Native Americans, from the treasure hunters in the area, and there's a lot of them. And that's where the best information comes from, is talking to the locals, going and talking to the geologists that are more open-minded, like the ones that worked for Bob Bigelow during the OSAP program or after the OSAP program, or with NIDS, instead of those at the University of Utah or BYU, because they're just not open-minded. And obviously their grants and their living comes from keeping that
comes from and I think that is always one of the big issues, of course, James, is the fact that the continuation of these narratives comes from the fact of the grants are there to, quote, continue the research, but really what they want is just further verification of the research done, not new research on it, which, once again, science ain't static. Even NASA came out and said, like, we are horrible in our task as scientists because we have ignored the anomaly in our data set that we should have been investigating, which is the job of science, not to keep, validating the same information. But when you come across an anomaly, like the example I give regularly is, I don't think I would have passed chemistry with the 3% remainder of solution not shown in my equation. Did it go to solid? Did it go to gas? Right? Like, gas, what happened to the remaining 3%? And
that may save your life.
But I mean, I wouldn't pass chemistry without being able to show where the 3% went. And when you're ignoring 3 to 5% of the data set on purpose, where's the other 3 to 5%? You're supposed to be accounting for it. You're supposed to be looking into it, and that seems to be the case all over, whether it comes to these civilizations like Dragon Man and things like that, or whether it comes to the locations of stuff that has been found previously, because even you guys have dealt with a massive number of claim jumpers. It is dangerous stuff that y'all are doing on the Ollinger's property out there. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see it.
They ask about security. That comes up quite a bit, and what people fail to realize is this is in the wilderness.
Yeah,
it's kind of in between the Uinta Basin and the mountains. It's extremely difficult to get to. If we used solar power to run cameras and things like that, it wouldn't work all the time because the weather is insane between the two hillsides.
Yeah.
It's 160 acres of the most difficult terrain to traverse. And I was hoping that we were able to show more of that last season. So maybe moving forward, we'll be able to show just how difficult it is to move across 160 acres when it's all this different terrain and cactus and then the streams and the creeks cutting through and the wildlife. But there's a lot coming up against that hunt for being able to go underground there. And I think that the fact that we were able to move a little bit off into BLM land, northward into Crow Creek, really helped, because the entrance to what's underneath the ranch may very well be outside of this boundary that was created by the state of Utah and the federal government of the United States. It doesn't adhere to what the local government or current government is telling us when it comes to something of that nature.
Well, and it would not surprise me one bit, James, because the whole national park system, to begin with, I'm not trying to go down any kind of conspiracy rabbit hole in our last 5 minutes together in a long time, brother. But boy howdy, the timing of the founding of the national park system was really interesting when you start looking at it in comparison to like when that cave of supposed artifacts was found in the Grand Canyon. Things like that. So it would not surprise me for the fact that the entrance to the cave system that you're at that may have something in it lies on government land and lies on the BLM portion that they just happen to carve and renegotiate the land rights of.
the boundaries.
Yeah. You know, let's just eke that right over here and make sure that entrance is on government land.
Sure, exactly.
You know.
And we're thinking in our minds shallow. We're too shallow with the cave system. It's a lot deeper than what we are thinking. It has to be 800 to 1,000 feet to open up into a very large system that's traversable for probably hundreds of miles.
Well, and to get through that crust of that bluish clay that contains the iridium and everything else, that's hard to get through. That'll eat up drill bits, everything else. So, especially if there's meteoric deposit, everything else throughout the soil, it may be tough to hit those depths. It may be tough to breach the top of even the system that you're trying to breach.
Sure. Yeah, you know, the same issues are occurring at a mesa above that other property that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You may talking about hitting massive iron deposits, or that this asteroid or meteor, what its makeup was, just tears apart drill bits.
Yeah, precisely. And trying to penetrate that to sea depths with anything like ground penetrating radar, that kind of stuff can be nigh impossible sometimes to be able to chart an underground cave system from the surface in what we would now consider pretty average and normal means. You know, like at one point it was wizardry. Now it's pretty common. Like you could probably hop on like Facebook and find somebody to come out and do ground penetrating radar in your area, you know, to trace a fault line or to trace a property line, something like that.
Yep, or to locate void systems.
Yeah.
You know, the magnetometers I use are supposed to be good up to 120 feet, but it just depends on what type of rock formation you're going through. I've been cut down to, you know, maybe 40 feet, unless we're seeing these fissures or long voids that we found that was like 124 feet. You know, whether that was natural or not, I think we still need to delve into more deeply.
Yeah, and I cannot wait to see where the next season takes things. I can't wait to see what your research comes of out there, especially in dealing with it. Let's definitely get you on again soon to specifically dive into the topic of, I mean, there's really no other way to say it other than giants in North America, because there's a long and rich tradition of that, not only storied tradition, but scientific tradition as well, when it comes to bones and things like that being found. So I'd love to have you on to deep dive into that one night, James.
Sure. Yeah. You know, when you're talking about that, I think the best thing to do is stick to finding skulls and the hip bones, the sacrums, because otherwise there is a possibility of it going into other types of mammals or creatures that they didn't know existed back in the 18th, 19th, and early 20th century.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, when you start getting into things like Gigantopithecus and stuff like that being found and being confused with human, all kinds of things.
Right. But you're not going to confuse a human or human type skull with a mammoth bone. So.
Yeah, precisely. So, James, thank you so much. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to follow your work. Let everybody know where they can go, of course, other than the Curious Realm website, to get your books, everything else, bud.
Sure. So on YouTube, it's James Keenan, Giants and Paranormal. And I put out a lot of the research and the findings at that YouTube site. You can also go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and look me up by name. My books come up first instead of Maynard James Keenan, because I think he's only got 2 books.
That's right.
So
that is true. That is true. However, if you end up at a winery, that's probably not this James Keenan.
Right.
Well, James, thank you so much as always for the time.
Thanks
I greatly
for having me.
appreciate it. I'll be sharing links, all that kind of good stuff with you here in just a little while. So thanks so much for the time. It's always great chatting with you and great catching up. We got to get you on more frequently, bud. Be safe
Sounds
out there
good.
with all the research. It's great to see that y'all are getting ready to go out and shoot the new season right now.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. Take care, man. It is always awesome catching up with guests that we haven't had on in a while. We haven't had James on since literally the rebrand of Curious Realms. So while you are online checking out all of the amazing work of James Keenan over on Amazon, folks, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is, of course, where you can find all of the videos from our guests. If you go to the videos page, that's where you can find all of their embedded YouTube channels, including James's. You can also go to CuriousRealm.com/store, and that will allow you to purchase all of the books by James Keenan as well. Don't forget, if you are a Roku user, we now have the official Curious Realm Roku app. You not only get all of the episodes, but you also get an amazing collection of binaural beat and frequency meditation music. When we come back from this commercial break, folks, we will be joined by our good friend, Craig Woolheater of Cryptomundo. He is one of the hosts and founders at the Fouke Monster Festival. The Fouke Monster Festival is coming up in Fouke, Arkansas at the end of April. We'll be doing a little bit of a preview about that, talking about some of the great events, some of the great things going on with that, as well as the importance of festivals like this to carry on traditions like the Fouke Monster. So we'll be getting into that right after this. The Curious Realm Podcast is your source for the latest and greatest news and events in the world of the paranormal, esoteric, and forbidden knowledge. And there's no better way to spark the conversation than with items from the Curious Realm store. Choose from fan favorites like hoodies, mouse pads, coffee mugs, and more. Buy books and items from your favorite Curious Realm guests. Get your hands on the latest gear for paranormal investigations and experiments we discuss on the show. Open your web browser and stop on by the Curious Realm store at CuriousRealm.com/store to buy the latest Curious Realm wear and out-of-this-world gifts for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is CuriousRealm.com/store. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back from that short commercial break. Thank you so much for hanging on. Thank you so much to True Hemp Science also. They are our CBD sponsor right here in Austin, Texas. They have by far the best CBD that I have found nationwide. I travel to dispensaries all over whenever I travel looking for products like that. I was prescribed CBD by my doctor for travel anxiety, and those guys are absolutely amazing. Stop on by and check out Christopher Lynch. TrueHempScience.com is the website that you want to go to. Curious7 is the code that you want to use to get 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more, and also get two free 50 milligram edibles with that order of $50 or more. So TrueHempScience.com, Curious7 is the code that you want to use, folks. Our guest in this segment is our good friend Craig Woolheater. He is the founder of Cryptomundo.com. He is also one of the founders of the Feast of the amazing Fouke Monster Festival. Welcome back to the show, Craig. How are you doing, my friend?
Good, Chris. Good. Good to see you.
Always great to chat with you. Your events are always so much fun. They are one of the highlights of my event year, not only personally, but show-wise. Like, it's always so much fun. You have great researchers that come out and talk about things, and Fouke is just one of the, even recently, I was on a show in San Antonio, and one of the guys that the VP of the company was like, "Oh, wait till you meet my buddy. He's going to want to talk to you about the Fouke Monster." This guy was hands down, Craig, one of the biggest Fouke Monster fans I have ever met. And he was just like, when's the festival? I hear you're all involved with the festival. When's this thing happening? I got to make it down to it. And it really is one of those really cool events that happens in a really small town that brings a whole community of people together. So thank you for always putting that event on with Lyle Blackburn.
Well, thank you, sir. I hope that your friend there comes up for it.
I am hoping he does as well. I was going to contact him as soon as we were done with this interview to be like, "Hey, look at what I just got done interviewing for, bud. You got to make sure and make it down." And it really is a fun event this year. You have a few speakers. What was it that first got you into the Fouke Monster? What was it that first brought you into cryptozoology, Craig?
Well, I was interested as a kid in the strange and unusual, and one of the first things that got me involved in this, like I said, the strange and unusual, was the case of the Lake Worth Monster in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, in Fort Worth specifically. Summer of 1969, there was just a rash of sightings. This is not that far from downtown Fort Worth, out at Lake Worth. And there were sightings by many, many people out there at the lake. It was kind of at that time, a lover's lane where the teenagers would go and hang out and make out and drink beer and stuff. And, that area is now owned by the city of Fort Worth. It's a nature reserve. And so I was interested in that. My grandparents had a boat out on the lake that was next to Lake Worth, the Eagle Mountain Lake. It was just separated by a dam, and spent a lot of time out there as a kid. And, the fertile imagination of a child, when monsters come up, is, always thinking that it was going to run into this thing out there. And so, I got a book by a local lady, Sally Ann Clark, and read that cover to cover probably over and over and over again. The next year, I got a copy of the book, Strange Creatures from Time and Space, by an author, John Keel, who later wrote the Mothman Prophecies that became a movie with was set up for, a couple years later, saw The Legend of Boggy Creek in the theater in 1973 when it was released nationally, and was just fascinated by it, just as Lyle Blackburn was, that, we had this creature that was not that far from where we lived in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and, kind of described as a Bigfoot type creature, which, wasn't just in the Pacific Northwest. So I had a Bigfoot sighting in 1994, driving back to Dallas from New Orleans on Memorial Day weekend visit, and saw what I can only describe as a Bigfoot type creature on the side of the road, driving back to Dallas late one night, and really got involved then. This is, for me anyway, pre-internet days. So when I finally got internet access a couple years later, I, went hog wild checking out what was on the internet back in 1997,
right?
Which was anything compared to nowadays. But I attended a Bigfoot conference up in southeast Ohio, and decided, hey man, there's nothing like this in Texas. I bet I could organize something like this. And so I started the Texas Bigfoot Conference in 2001. And, even though my event was 4 days after 9/11, we still had a good crowd that showed up, and pretty much have done it since then. I've gone to different events in Fouke over the years celebrating the Fouke Monster and the legend of Boggy Creek. And, there's been different events put on by different people, but the last one was in 2015. And so decided to, after running into the mayor of Fouke, Mayor Terry Purvis, in 2018, after the Texas Bigfoot Conference in Jefferson, which is only an hour away, we ran into him up there, and he was wondering why we had so many people up there. And I told him, well, we just, the Texas Bigfoot Conference just ended today, and so we brought a bunch of people down to Fouke, and he was lamenting the fact that they no longer had an event there in town, and he sure wished they had one, and said, well, it'd be an honor to produce an event here in Fouke to celebrate the legend. And so that's how it started. First one that I did was in 2019. We managed to produce the event every year during the COVID outbreak. And so we continued on, and we provide scholarships to seniors there at Fouke High School, just as we do here in Jefferson, the Jefferson High School, with proceeds from the Texas Bigfoot Conference. So, we believe in giving back to the community that supports us. So that's basically how I got started.
And I love the fact that you guys give away scholarships, all that kind of stuff, because it is about the community, and even keeping things like the Fouke Monster and the stories of the Fouke Monster alive. It's one of those that, yes, it does help support the community. Even though it is a topic that oddly kind of divides the town, kind of like whenever you find out that your town is famous for a haunted house, there's normally about half the town that's about it, and about half of them that's like, I wish the looky-loos would go away,
Right. That's correct.
But the fact that you guys have the support of Terry Purvis, who is an amazing guy, he's really cool. Getting to meet him has been fantastic. It's always a great event, and it's really cool to know that you guys are out there, you and Lyle and the festival, to help keep this story alive, to help keep the accounts alive, and to help keep the fact that there are still accounts alive.
Correct. There's, Lyle catalogs the sighting reports, and he still gets them reported to him, and speaks to the witness, and lets these be known, and is still compiling books of reports of the Fouke Monster. So it's a good thing to keep it going.
And yeah, I mean, Lyle is pretty well the, I guess, officially unofficial expert on the Fouke Monster. Like if there's a show that talks about it and it doesn't have Lyle in it, I would be amazed to see it. Because right. He's the one that whenever somebody comes into the Fouke Monster Mart and says, I saw something on the bayou, they immediately give them Lyle's number. Sure. He has so many stories, and is such I think also a great storyteller and advocate of the things that go on out there, and of keeping these stories alive for the culture of the local area.
True.
So what are some of the things that you're looking at this year? What's some of the stuff that's going on?
Well, we have Lyle Blackburn, as you've mentioned, Chester Moore, celebrated, outdoorsman. He's involved with, tons of stuff. Kingdom Zoo, his foundation to bring wildlife to troubled children. Higher calling. He does a lot of the bighorn sheep research. He has his own radio show, and he's an editor of Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine, or is it
Texas Field and Stream, I believe.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Right. And so he'll be there speaking about not only wildlife issues, but talking a bit about what he does for troubled children. We've got Marvin Leeper, a researcher from Oklahoma. We've got Brian Edwards, an up-and-coming cryptozoologist from the San Antonio area, which, face it, all of us are getting real old. We need new guys, new blood to come in.
Absolutely.
To
Absolutely. And that is something that I love having Ryan on. His grasp of science, evolution, things like that are absolutely fantastic. And his new book is awesome. Awesome. Chester Moore has a new book as well. That I think comes out like the week before the Fouke Monster Festival. So
the people, will want to come and get a copy of Chester's book, Bigfoot South, at the Forge, written by Lyle. And so both of them will definitely be there. And so folks that come can get a copy of it and get both of them to sign it. So, and we have, Tex Wesson, who is a longtime resident of that area, the Texarkana area, and grew up with the tales of the Fouke Monster.
Yep.
And so he'll be, talking about it, from a local perspective of growing up in that area. So, we've got the usual, we do the bus tours, the guided bus tours of the area, pointing out highlights of the movie, showing off some locations that were in the movie, as well as actual sighting locations of the Fouke Monster. So we drive people around and show them this, and a guided tour by Lyle himself of the high points and like I said, the stories that happened over the years, dating back to the 50s, and sighting locations and locations where the movie itself was filmed in 1972.
The movie, especially, I mean, the friend I was telling you about is a filmmaker, and for him, the movie it's literally one of his favorite films of all time. He kept going on all week at work about, man, I wish they'd just release that soundtrack. I wish they just release a CD of that soundtrack. I just want that soundtrack. There are rabid fans of that movie, and it's so interesting because it was an independent film, and it's not like an epic tale or epic saga like Star Wars or something like that. It is a tale of somebody's encounter out in the woods, and it's amazing to see how it's moved a community over the last 50 years.
Yeah, and Charles B. Pierce, who directed the movie, produced the movie, is his daughter Pam Pierce has picked up the torch and has had it remastered, and it's available now in 4K format, and she's working on getting the soundtrack together.
Nice.
To be released, and it's influenced several filmmakers.
Oh, absolutely.
Eduardo Sanchez, the guy that did the Blair Witch Project. I mean, his inspiration for making that movie was the Legend of Boggy Creek, and he's a personal friend of mine and has produced one Bigfoot movie that, in my opinion, is the best Bigfoot movie ever made, titled Exists, that came out in 2014. He wrote two more. He has two more Bigfoot movies in him that he's written the scripts for. That, and Exist was the low budget, the no budget, basically, Bigfoot movie, and a great film. He made that movie for $2 million. $150,000 of that budget was spent on nothing but the costume itself. I mean, it's an awesome costume used in that movie, and he's got a middle budget one, and for him a big budget, a Bigfoot budget movie of $20 million for a big Bigfoot movie. But, those haven't come about yet. But, I joked with him on the ride to Fouke from DFW Airport one night when he came out in 2021 for my Bigfoot Film Festival that when I won the Powerball that I was gonna provide the budget. I was gonna fund that whole movie, the big budget one. So it was just gonna be produced by Craig Woolheater, executive producer. It didn't need anybody else's name.
Right.
I was gonna fund the whole thing. So
yeah, I can appreciate that. That, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there is a whole subgenre. I mean, even last year, so much so that last year at the festival, there was a podcast set up at the end of the hall that only talks about Bigfoot films.
Right.
Like that's all that they talk about is Bigfoot films. And they were some cool guys. They were set up there, art by Saffron Cannon.
Right.
She's apparently going to be there again this year. Yeah.
I haven't gotten confirmation on that yet. But
okay.
Like I said, we're still 5, almost 6 weeks out.
Okay.
So once I get my car event this weekend wrapped up, then I can totally focus on the Fouke event until the event itself. I don't have to be pulled other directions from other events at that point.
Yeah, and that's just it. You put on, I mean, not only Fouke Monster Festival and Texas Bigfoot Festival, you are also the progenitor of Texas UFO Conference. You have in pocket the Texas Bigfoot Film Festival, all kinds of things. So, and even Miata Madness, which is something that goes on there in Jefferson this weekend.
That's right. We have people coming from all over Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas to bring their Miatas to town. We've got the block of the main street in town on 100 block of East Austin Street in front of the general store there. That'll be blocked off with who knows how many Miatas will show up from, all the way from the 1990 version up to the 2024s. So we have lots of trophies to give out to cars, and the show itself, the show and shine, will be open to the public from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on this Saturday, March 27th, for everybody to come check out the cars in town. And Jefferson's a great town to walk around and check out all the antique stores and restaurants and fudge shops and the general store and to check everything out in town. There's a lot of history. Everything in town seems to be haunted. And there's a ghost walk Friday and Saturday nights at 8:00. That's about a 2-hour walk through town with all the haunted locations that are pointed out. And so there's a lot to do here for a small town.
Oh, and you even have one of the last standing truss bridges in America.
Yes, sir.
Right there. It's a pretty cool little spot. A few years ago, actually, first time I ever had you on Dudes and Beer was right after you had Jefferson declared the Bigfoot capital of Texas.
That's true. It is the Bigfoot capital of Texas, and it has really taken off. I mean, a lot of the gift shops and stuff around town have, Bigfoot souvenirs and T-shirts and caps and figures and stickers and all kinds of stuff. And a lot of the restaurants in town have a Bigfoot themed menu item, from a Bigfoot burger, Sasquatch burger, all kinds of stuff. There we have a Bigfoot statue here in town. We're great photo ops right across from where we do the Bigfoot conference. And, there's a lot to see and explore. The nature trail there where the Bigfoot is at the entrance to the nature trail that goes under the truss bridge that you were just talking about. But there's several other Bigfoots that are stashed along the trail, And
Oh,
the
that's
kids
cool.
and kids and just visitors to town like walk down the trail and see if they can find the Bigfoots hidden among the trees
That's
on
awesome.
the trail.
That's awesome. And you know, here recently, you actively had a conservation act passed locally, correct?
Well, it's basically made Jefferson is the county seat of Marion County, and in Marion County is basically a safe haven for Bigfoot. That just as was done back in 1969 and in Washington State, were made that people were not to harass, kill, injure, maim Bigfoot. So we have the same that's been enacted here in Marion County now.
And that is awesome. You know, not too long ago, I mentioned that. And I want to say it was when I had Lyle Blackburn on, all of about a month ago, and Katie Elizabeth, one of she's a cryptid researcher, researches a lot on Champ, up north, and she was like, I don't know why more events don't sponsor conservation in that way. Because, I mean, one of the things I was bringing up with Lyle was the fact of if you want to do anything, if you are into cryptozoology, whatever, we literally covered this with Chester Moore last time he was on. Do something for wildlife conservation. Do something to help conserve the wildlands in your area and conserve their habitat to keep industry from moving out there, concrete crushing plants out in the middle of the woods, lumber activity, stuff like that. You think things are bad with a cougar or a bear roaming in your backyard because you got too close. Wait till the Bigfoot start roaming through apartment complexes, digging through the dumpsters, man. We have to conserve the wild areas that if these do exist, without preserving their habitat, what good are you doing?
Correct.
So, yeah, it's interesting. And I thought it was a great suggestion that, yes, probably more conferences should do something along those lines. So it's epic. It's great. And I mean, you guys, once again, with the conference, do some fantastic things for the community right there in Fouke, especially with the sponsored or the scholarships. So get into that for just a little bit.
Well, I started doing that in Jefferson, probably 7 or 8 years ago, because the community has supported the event.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, we've been issued 3 different town proclamations. In 2005, I was the mayor at that time issued a town proclamation stating that the third weekend in October in Jefferson is Texas Bigfoot Weekend here. I had another proclamation in honor of the 15th anniversary event back in 2016. And then, like I said, in 2018, we got the one passed that made Jefferson the official Bigfoot capital of Texas. And so, I wanted to, like I said, give back. So I have, a Texas Bigfoot scholarship that we award to Jefferson High School seniors, as well as we do the same for Fouke, because it's kind of surreal to be at the scholarship award ceremony and to see them pass out scholarship certificates to students who won the Texas Bigfoot scholarship. I think it's a pretty cool deal, as well as the Fouke Monster scholarship.
It's fantastic that you do it, because it really does not only give back to the community that you're already encouraging people to come visit, everything else, but it helps keep things like that in the mind of the youth, that helps keep things like that in the mind of high school students, stuff like that, where, you know, they then learn that they need to get involved as well, you know, to preserve this kind of heritage in their local area.
And on the scholarship applications, it has a line for them to, you know, offer their opinions on what they think about the Fouke monster or Bigfoot. And it's always, you know, interesting and entertaining to sort through all the scholarship applications and see what the youth thinks about that. And, you know, I, you know, decide, you know, pick the recipients of the scholarship. And so I would not be lying to say that, you know, their thoughts on the Fouke monster or Bigfoot may help them be the scholarship recipient.
Yeah, that it may just color the decision a little bit. Now, does an experience bump somebody up the ladder of getting the scholarship?
Well, I haven't had any applicants that have had personal experiences, but, you know, a lot of them mentioned, you know, hearing stories from their relatives, parents, you know, maybe not having, you know, encounters, but, you know, just the local legends.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, fantastic to know that those stories are being passed down. You know, I myself, as I say on the show regularly, I come from a Cajun lineage, and so much of that was shunned and pushed aside. I mean, even the language itself at one point was children were punished if they spoke it in school. You know, so now like you're hard pressed to find somebody. My mom is 100% Cajun. You're hard pressed to find somebody her age who can speak Cajun. You know, these things disappear so fast. It's not like it takes like 200 years for something like that to be forgotten. If nobody's sharing the stories, it would probably take about 10 years past whoever's running the Fouke Monster Mart for the last time. You know,
yeah.
It could disappear from the vernacular pretty quick.
And speaking of Cajun, we Friday night, this is the first year that we're doing it, but with the Fouke Monster Festival, we're having a special event Friday night that we're having. It's actually a catered Cajun dinner with the visitors, as well as we will be screening the latest 4K version of The Legend of Boggy Creek after dinner on Friday night.
Yeah, that's going to be great. That'll be fantastic. And you know, once again, to know that this film has been upgraded for modern standards, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that as things go forward in technology, that the story stays there, that it still stays relevant, that it still stays available for people. Because, yeah, as fast as technology goes by, if nobody had taken a 480 VHS and transferred it, you know, we probably wouldn't have it right now. It would be traded kind of the same way that the Fantastic Four bootleg is, you know, stuff like that. Where somebody, like you'd find it at a conference inside of a bin of stuff where, you know, bootleg movies, things like that, unreleased specials. And so to know that even that is being modernized, being upgraded, being made available digitally to make it available to wider audiences and to make sure that it's available to the next generation of technology as things get upgraded is awesome.
Yeah, and I hear rumors that that Pam Pierce may even show up for the event. So I don't know. So we shall see.
Wow, that'd be cool. That would be really awesome, man.
There have been talks of her making it down for the event. So we're looking forward to that if she can make it down. She lives in New Hampshire, so it's a little ways away. Yeah,
it's a little bit of a drive, to say the least.
Right.
but that would be really incredible if she could, especially it being such an awesome occasion, stuff like that. So, well, before we let you go, we've got you for a few more minutes.
Okay.
What has been the wildest Fouke Monster experience that you have heard amongst your many years doing this event, Craig?
Well, I've heard many more stories of Bigfoot here in Texas. Like, and the one report that stands out is not that far from here in Jefferson.
What's that?
It was on the Sabine River. A gentleman was hunting hogs, and he was up in a tree stand, and he heard, it was low light conditions early in the morning, and saw some movement, some hogs that were gathering, and he heard something come in that very rapidly descended upon a hog, a Bigfoot type creature, and it grabbed this hog and slung it up against a tree trunk, rendering it helpless and then dead, I guess. And he told me, interviewed him in person and talked to him and said that, he was up in this tree stand watching this and was just amazed, probably frightened, probably, needed a change of underwear after it happened. But he said that as the creature gathered up the hog to take it off to, I'm guessing, have breakfast, that it looked back and looked at him in the tree stand and, caught his gaze eye to eye and let out this tremendous scream, yell, and just shook him to the core. And, as a matter of fact, I do have a Fouke Monster story, and
please share.
The Fouke Monster story, if people want to look up that other report, that report is archived on the woodape.org of the North American Wood Ape Conservancy website for what county is it? Boy, it's hell getting old, Chris.
I can appreciate.
It's Panola County.
Okay.
The one report of the hog hunter, if they want to look up that report. But this report came from another hog hunter that was there in the Fouke area. And I just learned last week that this witness passed away back in 2002. I'm sorry, 2022. That he was a young guy, only 52 years old, but just looked him up to get in contact with him and found this tragic news out on his Facebook page that his son had posted, that did some backtracking and found out that he had passed away in February of 2022. But this was reenacted on the Swamp Stalker episode of Monster Quest that came out in the mid 2000s. And he was a hunter that was up in a tree stand, wasn't that far off the ground, and he saw something dark come in under his tree stand, and it turned out to be actually a Bigfoot. It was there in the Fouke area, in the bottoms there, and this thing reached up. He was camouflaged, and it was still dark, and the moonlight was glinting off the broadhead arrow on his. He was a bow hunter, actually. All and right. This thing reached up and to grab apparently the glinting moonlight caught its eye, reached up, and it pricked its finger actually on the broadhead, and then it let out a terrific roar, basically, and this gentleman, his name was Stacy, in his face, because it was that close.
Wow.
And like I said, this was reported to us back, I believe, in 2008. I believe it happened in 2000. But a great guy, Stacy Hudson, was an avid outdoorsman, had moved up to Colorado and was running a wildlife organization, I guess, taking people, guided hunts and such up there. And like I said, hadn't talked to him in a couple of years, and looked him up and found out, unfortunately, he had passed away. But that's probably the most incredible actual, encounter with the Fouke monster that I personally had, talking to him.
Wow. And it's interesting when you start hearing stories from hunters, because so frequently it's the fact of, oh no, I had it in my scopes. Like I had the shot, and I can't take it. I couldn't do it.
I've talked to people like that. There was one up near the Red River in Texas that was hunting and heard a strange sound, and he was there with his deer rifle and set up to hunt, and looked around and saw what at first he thought was a burned out tree stump in a tall grass field. And as he looked at it through his scope, he saw that it was not a burned out tree stump, that it was a creature that was being perfectly still. And he then heard something else coming from the opposite direction and looked to see if he could see anything. And when he turned around, this thing was gone. And he said that he didn't know. What scared the crap out of him is he didn't know, had it run off or if it had dropped down into the grass out of view.
Yeah.
And he left everything there and departed, just got out of there because he was so freaked out. He said he could have ended this. He could have gotten a shot right between the eyes of this thing, but that it looked too human. And I'm not talking about, looked like some guy walking down the street, but had humanistic features that he just couldn't do it. Like I say, people that want to shoot one of these or claim they're going to, I liken it to, looking in the face of a chimpanzee or a gorilla and being able to look at the self-awareness there, and to be able to put a bullet in its head, you got to be a cruel,
you got to be on a different level for certain. Because I mean, even as somebody who grew up hunting, I've shot a couple deer in my life, but I know quite a few avid deer hunters, big game hunters, things like that. And they will regularly let a large stag go away, something like that they had in their scope, because it's better to let the large breed go keep breeding, right, so that there's more of them. And it's also one of those like appreciations for the animal. Just like out of respect, I couldn't kill that thing. Just the fact that I got to see it was incredible enough, much less to take its life for a little bit of meat. And I know numerous hunters like that. So yeah, I would not doubt that if somebody had a Bigfoot in their scope, that the story might be a little bit different than what they say. Even with your experience now, Craig, what were your feelings when it happened? Was it apprehension, fear? What was your initial remembrance of feeling post-event for you?
I wanted to stop to get a better look, and my girlfriend at the time, ex-wife now, wanted nothing to do with it. And not a day goes by that I don't regret not stopping. I don't know what would have happened, but I wanted to get a better look. I mean, it was just a passing glance of maybe, 6, 7, 8 seconds driving past it at, 70 miles an hour. So
Yeah.
I wish that I had gotten a closer look. But that 6 or 8 seconds, definitely changed my life.
Yeah.
Also, going back to Stacy's pretty incredible encounter, like I said, it was profiled on Mysterious Encounters.
Yep.
No, not Encounters, but Monster Quest. The Swamp Stalker episode. I believe it was. I'm trying to think what season it is. I think there were 3 seasons of the show, but you can look it up by episode on IMDb, and you can see they're available on. I believe it's one of the streaming services that the Monster Quest episodes are available. So you can go back and watch that, and you can see the recreation, and you can also find the details of that sighting, his encounter, on the woodape.org website for the North American Wood Oak Conservancy, under Miller County in Arkansas. That report with his words, what he submitted, and then the follow up with an investigator are available on that website as well.
Wow. Awesome. And of course, any information that you would want about any of your stuff is pretty well available all over Facebook. All you have to do is search any of the events by name, anything for Fouke Monster Fest. You can always go to foukemonster.net/festival, as we have at the bottom of the page right there on the video, folks. And you can find out everything, not only about Fouke Monster sightings and books, but about the festival itself right there. So there's links to the tickets, all that kind of good stuff. And it's going to be a great festival. It's going to be a great day of presentations from some great speakers. It's going to be a great night of camaraderie beforehand, with dinner and the film. So Craig, as always, man, I'm looking forward to the event. It's going to be super fun.
Very cool. Also on that's Lyle Blackburn's website.
Yes.
And one of the other tabs across the top menu is Visit, and you can get details on where you can camp for free in the area, other places to camp. If you want to camp at Alex Smith Park in Doddridge, about 20 minutes from Fouke, from the festival itself, there'll be a lot of Bigfoot folks, fans that
Yep.
come in and camp there at the park, because the camping is free there.
Yeah.
And so there'll be plenty of people there, but there's details on, outfitters and such there in the Fouke area that you can find on the website there.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic resource for all things Fouke Monster, especially the event. So, Craig, thanks as always for the time, man. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. It's great calling you friend. It's even better getting to go to the events every year and being able to help you out with them. So, yeah.
Your assistance is much appreciated, Chris.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, well, hold the line, I guess, while we close things out with the audience, all that kind of good stuff. Okay. Of course, folks, while you are online checking out everything from FoukeMonster.net, as well as Cryptomundo, as I said in the intro, Craig is one of the founding members of Cryptomundo.com, which is the literal, first website ever about cryptozoology. There's all kinds of articles posted there, all kinds of great stuff. Go on by, follow that. You can, of course, find FoukeMonster.net right there on the side. All kinds of great stuff. While you're online checking that out, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. Follow, subscribe, share. You can visit the store, CuriousRealm.com/store, and that is where you can buy all the books and videos, all of the good stuff from our guests here on the show. And of course, make sure to stop on by, if you are a Roku user, And download the all-new Curious Realm Roku app. You get all the episodes as well as some amazing binaural beat and meditation music. Check that out. We are now carried, of course, on Ground Zero Media Network as well as Aftermath Media. All kinds of great things. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Remember, it is the conversation that moves humanity forward, and without you and your open hearts and open minds, the conversation does not happen. So until next time, stay curious. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. To download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault, or become a sponsor of Curious Realm, visit our website at curiousrealm.com. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast and video services, as well as KPNL Radio, APR TV, and the Curious Realm app for Roku devices. Curious Realm is a proud member of the Ground Zero Media and Aftermath Media family of podcasts. For more great shows and members-only content, visit groundzeromedia.org and aftermathmedia.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious, and remember, the other side is always watching.